Welcome back to Gaelic Games Fan TV. It is the Championship preview show. We're going to be looking ahead to this weekend's Championship action taking place in Gaelic football. 6 games to discuss, 6 games to preview, 4 games in Leinster, 2 games in Ulster. Joined by Matthew Hurley from the Gaelic Statsman podcast and Seamus Brady from On Clihe. We have the gang all together for the Championship, and it's absolutely great to see. Lads, how are we?
Yeah, it's been a while since we've all been on the same one together, hasn't it? Looking forward to jumping in. Yeah, we've got a busy weekend. Looking forward to it, lads.
Yeah, definitely so. Well, not too many football games, but a lot of other events. Obviously, there's LGFA Camogie finals on this weekend in the league as well, just to finish it off as well. But yeah, some interesting enough games. Looking at them, I think Tyrone and Cavan's probably the pick of the bunch, possibly Offaly and Meath, and comically, Offaly and Meath isn't even shown on TV, which is, look, that's another discussion for another day.
That time again, is it?
Yeah.
GA plus, maybe GA extra. You know, you need more games. Oh, I don't know.
Geez, even then, like all the college championship is being streamed live, and like there's some games in Munster, in like all of Ulster is streamed live as well. Coincidentally, like Ulster's live at BBC Northern Ireland's. Then you have Connacht and GA plus. Then you have Leinster and Munster. Some of them games are being pushed over by the wayside, which I personally don't agree with at the best of times there. But yeah, Offaly and Meath should be shown. Let's be honest, though. That is a pretty good game to watch. Well, yeah, we can't watch it, obviously.
That's a good one. That's a shame to miss out on that one, lads. If we're being honest, that one, when you're looking at some of the ties this weekend, like Aaron, we were saying it before we jumped on, it's fairly obvious who the favourites are in a lot of the fixtures. Offaly and Meath, yes, Meath, you would say, are the favourites, but Offaly have a serious chance of upsetting them in that one. Yeah, we've taken a massive step forward, I would say, in terms with GA Plus. I think if you look at some of the content that they put out, even like before the Galway game, before the Mayo Sligo game, if you look at some of the content they were putting out, like the interview that Michael Meehan did with Park Joyce and what they're saying they're going to do, like the weekend preview shows, review shows free on YouTube, like that's music to our ears. So we are taking steps in the right direction, but it's unfortunate when you see a game that's going to be as competitive as this, and unfortunately it won't be available to watch for anyone who isn't actually at the venue itself.
Yeah, like we definitely are taking steps forward, and you know, it is a very good service and everything else, and we're getting to see more games than we did see previously. But at the same time, there definitely is just, I don't know, there has been this thing in the GA over the last year, you know, couple of years, even since GA Go came about, where it's just common sense just doesn't quite apply. And like you look at it, like of all the games this weekend, like don't get me wrong, I think Tyrone Cavan obviously has a bit of history to it. It was a cracking game last year, so I'm glad obviously that's being shown. You've got Antrim Armagh because of everything that's happened there. There's obviously a bit behind that. I don't think Wicklow Dublin's been shown anywhere. You've got Kildare Westmeath, who are obviously rivals in themselves as well. But certainly a game like that, Meath Offaly, like that's like there's a proper storyline there as well, even from, I think, was it 2 years ago when Offaly beat them as well in the Leinster Championship. So like there's a proper storyline there.
Yeah, definitely. And it is a shame. It really is. Like you look at the other games in Leinster, I think Leach and Loud is actually going to be thinking about the Leinster games. Actually, 3 of them are actually, the more I talk about, the more I think 3 of them are actually going to be very, very tight this weekend. It's only Dublin and Wicklow that'll be absolutely a whitewash. Feel sorry for the Wicklow boys there, but yeah, I think that Kildare Westmeath, to be fair, that probably has its place on GA Plus because that is a huge game. The winner stays in the Sam Maguire for now. The loser has to go down to the Tailteann Cup, which is a huge game given the consequences. Meath and Offaly, I think it's consequential more for Offaly than it is for Meath, because Meath finished third in Division 2. They're kind of safe, and Dublin will be the next opponents in the semi-final. I don't think either side are beating them, so maybe they're taking it down that alley. But when you look at the way Meath and Offaly played football in the league this year, both of them played some excellent stuff. And it is a shame that it is not being shown. And you even look at, I know they're making strides with the preview shows and stuff like that, but I keep going back to the discussion. I know people are bored of me saying this, but the League of Ireland show every single game on LOI TV, whether it's Virgin Media, possibly some on Premier Sport as well. They show it. You look at the rugby, like Munster La Rochelle over the weekend. It might not have been on RT, but it was on Premier Sports. You have Glasgow and Leinster over the weekend on RT. You have Munster and Bordeaux Beagles, I think, on Premier Sport over the weekend as well. Those sports are being shown. And I just feel like in Gaelic football and hurling as well, not enough is being shown to kind of spread the game. And that's probably the most disappointing kind of aspect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, to finish up on that particular topic, like I think it is making steps in the right direction. But hopefully we can get something a little bit closer to, as you said, the likes of League of Ireland shown every game is fantastic. A few comments here. Benny says Tyrone to win Sam. Feared I men. And Sean says Tyrone new manager syndrome incoming. So plenty of people chatting about Tyrone here. And Sean also said new app, same problems there. In relation to that, and Acer says Wicklow ground only has 6,000. Yeah, there's been some demand for tickets in that game, and I was chatting to the lads off air. I'm hoping to go, but I don't think I will be. I've heard even season ticket holders won't be able to go, but sure, look, at the end of the day, the game is outside Croke Park. It is better that it's going to be in Ockram than Croke Park. In fairness, be a much better atmosphere. And it is not every day of the week where Dublin do play in Ockram as well. So it's just one of them trade-offs, unfortunately. But there we go. We are going to crack into the games. There's 6 games to preview. And I was chatting to the lads a little bit off air in terms of something that we are going to discuss. Because a lot of these games are, I would say, fairly easy to predict. There's probably maybe 2, maybe 3 at a stretch that I think are going to be relatively close. Maybe there might be more. We'll wait and see. But we're going to have a bit of a chat around championship upsets in Gaelic football in terms of some of the best championship upsets that we think we've ever seen in Gaelic football, whether it be in provincial championships or in the All-Ireland series, qualifiers, whatever it may be. Take your pick. Some big ones, obviously, and it's quite an open-ended question. There's obviously a lot to discuss, and there'll 100% be parts of this we'll miss, and we're not going to spend all day chatting about it. But Matthew, I'll give you the mic first in terms of what you think off the top of your head. Now, bear in mind, I only asked you this about 2 or 3 minutes before we went live. So, what's the first game, in your opinion, that comes into your head?
I have 3, Aaron, and one might be from a personal point of view. The other 2 were general shocks from the same season, coincidentally. The one from a personal point of view, obviously, Mark Keane's goal for Cork against Kerry. I have to mention that.
Man. I love that one as well.
Yeah, we miss him in the Cork footballers at the moment, but nice. That was an exceptional shock, and I knew we'd put it up to Kerry that night, but I didn't think we'd beat them, and we did. That was exceptional in its own right. The 2 that, from an unbiased point of view, that I'm thinking of from the same season, coincidentally, Longford beating Mayo in the first round of the qualifiers in 2010, and Down beating Kerry in the All-Ireland quarterfinal. Yeah. I'll go down Kerry first of all, because that was one result where I woke up that morning thinking, okay, Dublin Tyrone might be a close game. The second game at Croke Park, Down and Kerry. Down have done well to get here, but Kerry should take care of business, no problem. Down shocked them in the first half. Mark Poland's goal, Ambrose Rogers taking some unbelievable scores that day. Benny Coulter was brilliant. Marty Clark was absolutely outstanding. And Kerry just, for a side that won, I think it was 3 All-Irelands in the past 4 seasons, Kerry had no answer. And that was unbelievable. That was a Down team that rarely got close in Ulster. They'd only, like in the qualifiers, as far as I can remember, they only beat, I think, Offaly in round 3 and Sligo in round 4. So going into yes, they hammered both of them, but going into this Kerry game, they were like undercooked going into it. And you looked at all the 4 quarterfinals over the weekend. I thought the slam dunks that year would have been Cork beating Roscommon, which was the case, and Kerry beating Down, which it just never got going for Kerry that day. And I don't know, I'm not sure exactly why. It was just one of those weird kind of events that you would say, how on earth did that happen? Longford beating Mayo, like, then again, Longford were at home, and we know how much of a fortress Glenburn Pierce Park is for Longford. But Mayo really struggled that season under, obviously, the John O'Mahony, God rest his soul, obviously. But Mayo absolutely struggled after, and they just had no answer to Longford. And it was just that season overall, 2010, like something in the water that season, and there was shocks flying in and around the place. And yeah, it was a shocking season, but for me, I think the number one has to be, at a high standpoint as well, has to be Down Kerry in Crow Park in 2010.
Yeah, I did like that one. Mine, I would say I have three as well myself. Cavan, Donegal in the Ulster final 2020, because I remember being convinced that Donegal were going to be the most likely team to beat Dublin in that year's championship. And I remember when Cavan actually beat Donegal, that was when I was probably the most susceptible I've ever been in GAA to like weird supernatural things when like the same four teams that were in the semi-final in 1920 would now, because of that game, the same four teams that were in the semi-finals of 2020. That was crazy. Also, I always was shocked when Carlow beat Kildare in 2018 in the Leinster Championship, and the way that they beat them, that was a real statement performance, and probably the highlight, let's be honest, of the Carlow Rising era under Turlock O'Brien and Stephen Poacher. And of a very, 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 very retro one. Fermanagh beating Armagh in the All Ireland quarterfinal of 2004.
Yeah.
That was a massive shock at the time, because Armagh had won the All Ireland in 2002. They'd lost the final to Tyrone in 2003. They'd won Ulster in 2004, and they were hotly tipped to be one of the front runners to win the All Ireland title that year. And Fermanagh came from absolutely nowhere that day. Like, nobody saw them coming. And some stars for Fermanagh were announced that day, like the Barry Owens, the Marty McGraths, the Tom Brewsters, and they beat them with a late winner. And still to this day, that's, if you talk to most Fermanagh fans, like hardcore Fermanagh fans, that's one of their greatest days.
Yeah, no, absolutely, no, yeah. Like the 2004 game definitely stood out. To think they nearly beat Mayo as well, and the All Ireland semi-finals. The first game was a draw, and then obviously Mayo won fairly comfortably in the second game. I think Downs won, against 2010 or against Kerry in 2010. Like that's definitely one that stood out. Like I remember visibly watching that game and thinking, like, this should be a formality. This should be comfortable enough. Maybe Down might put up a bit of a fight against Kerry, but you would expect Kerry to come through it. I think some other ones there, like I think Tipperary winning Munster in 2020 as well. I mean, I know Matthew was talking about one of his fond moments and beating Kerry. I don't mean to drag it back down, but obviously that, I mean, at the same time, that probably wasn't actually that big of an upset because both teams were playing in the same division. Tipperary actually had some very good footballers at that stage as well. Leitrim 1994 as well. You can't forget them winning the Connacht Championship. Clare in 1992 as well. Obviously beating Kerry in the final as well. Sean says here Newbridge or nowhere 2018. It's not a bad shout as well, to be fair. I mean, so many great shocks, so many great surprises. It's hard to definitively say what's number one. I've always looked at Clare 92 and Leitrim 94 just because winning silverware, especially in scenarios where, like, it hasn't been done again for either one of them two. And realistically, they have. I know Clare have got to a few Munster finals, but like neither of them have really come close since that moment.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, most of the shocks tended to come when the game was a little bit more fast and loose, and maybe we'll see more shocks over the next 5 years with these new rules. Because I remember Joe Brolly put it perfectly. Joe Brolly was like, I can't remember exactly what debate he was talking about it in, but I've no doubt you lads would have heard him say this. Is he was like, back in the day, you could go in against a big team and you could have a shootout against them, and it was, if they were on an off day and everything went well for you, like the underdogs could turn over the favourites. But the way that the game was being played the last few years, if the favourites, suffered a bit of a setback in the game, they would probably just take the ball, hang on to it for about 5 minutes, not give you the ball back, not let you build up any momentum. And they would take any element of risk or doubt out of the game, and you knew that they would always rig the game almost. So like the house always wins type. You think
Mm.
about it, like most of the shocks that we've named, with the exception of 2020, which just in general was a weird year. From 2021 on, have we seen any big shocks? Like
No.
proper, like
Yeah.
major, be like, what the, like when you saw the result come in?
Possibly, would you say Cork and Mayo in the group stage 2023?
No,
Mm.
I was definitely surprised, but Cork had been making serious strides that year.
Yeah.
I'd say big one last year for me, London beating Offaly by 12 points in O'Connor Park. That for me was one. You could say London beating Leitrim and Sligo in 2013 actually and making the Connacht final. That would definitely be a shocker.
Mm.
Because Sligo only 3 years before had looked like they were the best team in Connacht. I know they didn't win it that year, but did you see that meme? It was like it was like from that Connacht final in 2010, but it was like, I didn't get a second date, but at least she knows how good Downey Shine played in the Connacht final in 2010, or something
Mm.
like that. It's like that performance was just goated performance.
Yeah, I mean, 2010 is so many of them. Like, it's mad. And even when I was making that video kind of on the 2010 championship last year, like, it was mad going back and seeing, Longford beating Mayo. But there was so many near misses as well. Like, Antrim and Kildare, I remember, drew. I think they drew a game and it went to a replay. I think it was like a round 1 or round 2 qualifier. And to think Kildare went on to reach the All-Ireland semi-finals. Like, there was so many near misses as well. And speaking of...
Wexford beat Galway that year, so Wexford
Yeah.
beat Galway, and Wexford were
To be fair,
better. Wexford were better than Galway that year.
to be fair, Seamus, though, Galway were an absolute rag order that day. I remember, I think it was Joe Curlin was in charge of them.
Yeah.
And Joe Brawley actually said, what's an Armagh fella doing in charge of Galway? Galway were a mess that year. Actually, you talk about near misses. This is a very good one in 2010. Limerick almost beat Kerry, and then they almost beat Cork as well.
Yeah, extra time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Limerick were serious that time. John Galvin in midfield and Joe Collins in full forward. They were good.
John Galvin was a baller. He was class. Would have snapped him up on the transfer market in a heartbeat if we could.
Yeah, Mikey had a good one here as well. Sligo Kerry in 2009.
Oh, I remember that one.
Almost doing the unthinkable. Do you know what? That game actually haunts me, to be honest with you, because I remember that was before Kerry played Dublin. And I remember thinking Kerry looked like they're on the ropes. Dublin are coming in full of steam. And then
Aaron, do you
I shall not speak about the rest.
Do you remember there was a song released at the time? There was a song released just before that game, and it went something like, it was like, "We'll hammer Kerry, you know we want to." Do you remember it?
I actually don't, to be honest.
I watched it,
but maybe that's selective memory, you know?
It was set to like the Pitbull team. And it was like, well, it just basically went on for 3 minutes about how Dublin were going to hammer Kerry. And then the video just disappeared the minute the game was done. Like, I'd love to find it if someone still had it, but like, God, in terms of videos aging badly, the age is even worse than you saying Mayo would win the All Ireland last year.
Well, that was the year. That was the year before. Actually, to be fair, 2023.
And actually, another one in 2010, lads. Do you remember Meath scoring 5 goals past Dublin?
Yeah, sound man. Peace out. Actually, I'm off.
To be fair, like, don't get me wrong, Meath beating Dublin by that significant margin was a surprise. But actually, at the time, like, Dublin were all over the place given what happened in 2009. They should have got beat by, I think it was Wexford. I think I remember in the quarterfinals, it went to extra time. Dublin somehow managed to get that game to extra time. So it probably wasn't that big of a surprise to see Meath win that game. But I can understand in the context of things looking back at it now, and obviously how big of a victory it was as well, to be fair.
Yeah. The 5 goals, I remember walking in, like, I think I went out to get some food kind of halfway through the first half at one point. So I was starving. And I remember coming back and they'd scored 2 goals in the part where I was gone. And I just remember being like, what is going on? Like, because at that time I hadn't actually, because I was 9 years old at the time. So I remember I'd only started going to games in 2005. So yeah, a bit of foreshadowing, but like I'd never seen Dublin lose in Leinster where I had a memory of it.
Yeah.
And I
Probably,
mean,
probably the memory, I'd
yeah,
imagine.
memory's getting hazy as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean, I hadn't made my
madness, really.
communion
Like,
yet the last time Dublin lost.
that's just, that's mad, isn't it? It's mad. Yeah, sure. Like when Dublin last lost, I was 15, so I think I was doing my junior cert. My junior cert was that year. Isn't that just crazy,
It's
isn't it?
crazy, man.
But there's a few good comments here. I'll actually run through. Paul says here it wasn't after 2021, but Fermanagh beating Monaghan,
Oh, that was a
1-8,
good one.
10 points. Always sticks in my head. Mikey says here New York getting their first win last year. I think it was actually the year before, but I do take your point in fairness. Sean says Donegal smashing Derry last year, considering the form that Derry were in. And also Donegal, Dublin 2014 as well. That's that's a good mention, to be fair, as well. Mikey says Tipperary smashing Galway 2016 quarterfinals. So yeah, no, there's some absolute like crackers in terms of championship upsets. Will we get any upsets this weekend, do you think?
I could see Offaly beating Meath.
Great. Yeah, I actually could see. I don't want to go around the same lines as Seamus, just to make it a bit interesting. I think Laois have a chance against Louth.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I think with the Offaly Meath game, we'll get into it more. But I think when you put the equation together and go, Meath have lost those two big pillars from their backroom team just before the championship started. Jordan Morris is still injured. They're not coming into this game at 100%, whereas Offaly are coming in now. They've had the week rest, but they're fresh off the back of winning the Division 3 title after a brilliant performance in Croker. Their confidence is at an all-time high, and they've nothing to lose in this game.
Yeah. And so look, we might as well start with that game because we're kind of discussing it in great detail in terms of Meath versus Offaly taking place in Navan. As we've said previously, like Meath coming in with a bit of turmoil, obviously in terms of management, people leaving the backroom team, injuries, no Jordan Morris potentially, whereas Offaly are absolutely flying. And both you lads have kind of hinted at a prediction for Offaly. In my All-Ireland predictions video, I did predict Offaly to win this game, so I'm certainly not going to change my tune. And I think it's there for them. I absolutely think it's there for them, just given how good Offaly have obviously looked throughout Division 3, the Mickey Hart effect as well, Jack Bryant, Cormac Egan, and it just has the making of an Offaly win, just given some of the issues that are going on in MGA right now.
Yeah, definitely. And Offaly have looked very, very good attack-wise. As you mentioned there, Jack Bryant has been absolutely in brilliant form at the league final. I don't think he was in that great form in the 7 games previously. I think the main players were Keith O'Neill and Dylan Hyland. Those were the two guys that were mainly scoring. Cormac Egan from wing-back has been brilliant as well. And Mickey Hart has brought in kind of a bit of experience along with Declan Kelly. And Declan Kelly deserves his credit as well, to be fair. Like, you look at last year, we mentioned earlier on, they got absolutely slaughtered by London in the Tailteann Cup. For them to recover and perform the way they did, they've done brilliant, in fairness to them. I don't think Meath have done too badly this year. I just think it's the fact a few pieces of the jigsaw have now gone completely missing ever since the league ended. Like, Jordan Morris, obviously no fault of Meath's themselves. That's an injury that can happen, but that's one of Meath's main forwards, and that is a huge loss to Meath. Obviously, they were playing a Carlow team that were turmoil themselves the last time out, so you can't really judge them on that. And losing the two fellas in the backroom team, Joe McMahon and Martin Corey, we don't obviously know what went on behind the scenes there, but it looks pretty bad when the guys, after probably a positive league campaign, the two lads walk. That is that is probably a negative from a Meath point of view. I'd probably go for Offaly as well, just the way they've played football as of now, the way they've adapted to the new rules, the way there's no pressure on. Well, you could argue there's actually more pressure on Offaly than there is Meath, because Offaly need to fight to keep their Sam Maguire status. Meath are ranked, I think it's 11th in the league rankings, which should be enough for them to retain Sam Maguire status, even if they lose this game. So maybe there isn't too much pressure on me to go into this game in a way. But then again, like, yeah, I genuinely think Offaly have a huge chance when you look at the forwards that they have there, the youth in abundance there as well, the feel good factor around Offaly GA right now, hurlers and footballers, by the way. So yeah, I think Offaly have a huge chance of beating them, and with all the stuff going on behind the scenes, it all seems to be going rosy in the garden for Offaly. It doesn't for Meath, and I think Offaly could turn them over this weekend despite being away.
Yeah, like do you think, Seamus, though, as well, it might be a bit disingenuous maybe to Meath a little bit, because at the same time, like, yes, obviously they have had, as we said, the lads leave the backroom team, Jordan Morris is injured and everything else, but look, they still have Robbie Brennan there, they still have a very good team, a lot of very, very good footballers. They did finish, what was it, third in the end in Division 2, which was a lot better than a lot of people expected, including me. Still have a lot of very, very good footballers playing in Navan as well. So, like, I mean, is it, like, are we maybe just reading, too much into Meath unraveling a little bit? Like, they're still a very good team. Like, and they should still, in my opinion, have enough quality to beat Offaly, but it's just more so how good, obviously, Offaly have looked this year.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you're giving a lot of credit to what momentum can do for you in a game like this, because I think if you're to line them up player for player, I think you're probably taking more Meath players in a combined 15 than Offaly players, and I say that with all due respect to how good Offaly are right now, but Offaly just have a sort of momentum behind them and a real spirit behind them right now that they feel like they can take on the world. And especially with Meath, stubbing their toe a little bit towards the end of the league campaign, because the promotion was there for them. And I couldn't believe it when I was watching the Meath Loud game, how flat they were. I couldn't believe how flat they were. And then when you see only few days later, McMahon and Corey leave the backroom team, you're like, were those two things linked? Like, was that what was going on? Was that, was there discontent in the dressing room at half time? Was there discontent in the dressing room before the game started? Was there mixed messaging to the players? And is that kind of why it has all gone the way it's gone? And has Robbie had the time to kind of put them back on track, in that time period? I do agree with what you said about the Carlow game. They won that game very easily, but it was a Carlow team who literally probably had the worst preparation possible for a first round championship game, like losing their manager 10 days out. Yeah, they put a beating on them, but that was very much what they were expected to do. They have home advantage for this game. I really, really genuinely think this is a toss of a coin. If Meath played to their best, they win this game, in my opinion. But I think it's more likely that Offaly come 10 out of 10 than Meath do.
Yeah.
So I think this game has extra time written all over it, lads.
Yeah, no, I agree as well, and I am going to back Offaly to get the win as well. I think as you said, like, when you're looking at it from a consistency point of view,
I'll go Meath. Shake it up. See if Matthew wants to be the tiebreaker.
Over to you.
Right. I'll go Offaly. I just feel like there's more content in the Offaly camp at the moment than the Meath camp. I think that might be enough to push them over the line.
Yeah. Sean says here, Meath still seem in disarray, but Offaly seem like a team on the ascendancy. And Mikey says Meath still scoring for fun, despite backroom trouble. If they play at or near their best, then they should get over Offaly. Moving on from that, another game in Leinster that could be very even. Kildare versus Westmeath. Massive game, obviously taking place in Newbridge. It's interesting because Kildare obviously coming in with the momentum, obviously having been promoted from Division 3. Westmeath haven't won a game this year. They obviously had the one draw versus the Rossies. But it is obviously worth pointing out that Westmeath have been obviously playing at a much higher standard than Kildare. And Kildare, to be fair, the two teams that they were actually in contention with for promotion, they lost two, both Offaly and Clare, and they actually lost Offaly twice as well. So it's a hard one to call this, lads. Matthew, I'll come to you first on it.
I think in terms of a confidence standpoint and in terms of keeping Sam Maguire's status, Kildare have to win this game. You look at their form earlier on the year, okay, it was very, very good against sides like with the greatest respect, Laois, Sligo, who were down the table, who ended up being down the table, Leitrim, they put those sides away with ease. But when they came up against sides that were actually going to tackle there, they lost both games against Clare and Offaly. And they were behind Antrim at half-time at home as well, which was even more concerning as well from a Kildare point of view. Look, I think Brian Flanagan is still the right man to take Kildare forward. But I think if Kildare lose this game, there's going to be an awful lot of pressure on him, given the way Kildare fans turned on Glenn Ryan and his management team last year. And with Westmeath, it's kind of a weird one. I think Westmeath are coming into this with no pressure on them. After the Division 2 campaign, they played some decent enough football. They only got 1 point on the board. And weirdly enough, I do think that Kieran Martin levelling 2-pointer against Roscommon will give Westmeath a whole lot of confidence, because it showed that they could compete with anybody in the division. Like against Meath, for example, if the rules were amended for that game in particular, we could have been talking about a Westmeath draw in that game against Meath. They were very close against Cork. They were decent enough against Monaghan. They probably should have beat Cavan. They were way ahead at halftime and couldn't hold out the lead. Westmeath have showed some positive signs in this league campaign. Whereas with Kildare, it's kind of a weird thing saying, because Kildare won games and Westmeath didn't. But Kildare performed at a lower level, and we don't exactly know where the team is at. And they're all relatively young players as well. Like Callum Bolton was excelling in midfield, but he was one of the under-20 stars. Ryan Singey's been one of the top scorers from play. He's still part of the Kildare under-20 team, as shown in match programmes in the past few weeks. Jimmy Hyland hasn't played nearly any game. I know he scored 2 points in the league, but I don't think he's played much games at all. Darragh Kieran has only been a sub at times. So it's hard to judge with this Kildare side. Kevin Feely's done well in midfield at stages, but this is a really tough game to call, because like the significance of it is so big, and where both sides are at, it's very, very difficult to call. I think Westmeath are in a slightly better position given they played higher level opposition, but Kildare are at home as well, and the Kildare fans have to get behind them in St. Conleth's Park at the weekend. If they don't, look, let's think of it as a scenario like this. If Westmeath are ahead, given the new rules, by 5+ at halftime, it'll be interesting to see what the Kildare fans' reaction to that would be. Will they turn on their team, or will they bat them to the hills in the second half? It should be very, very interesting. And this game, in so many standpoints, is a very interesting one to watch.
Yeah, like I couldn't see the Kildare fans turning on them, to be honest with you, especially with Brian Flanagan being so early into management, or you know, and obviously what he's done with Kildare in the past as well with the under-20s. But I do think there's a good comment here from Paul, who says, looking far ahead, does this Kildare team struggle in Division 2 with the quality in the next year? Hard to read Kildare, and it's been the same for years. It is interesting with Kildare that you can't really judge them too much. Like if you're judging them off of the games where they've played teams close to their level, they've lost them. Do you know what I mean? So it's hard to really see if they have made progress. They obviously have chopped and changed their team quite heavily. It feels like they haven't quite come alive, but at the same time, a game at home in obviously the new bridge, as I like to call it, against Westmeath. Obviously not as big of a rivalry, I would say, as maybe some other counties in Leinster, but there is, you know, it is still a Midlands derby as such. I mean, and if Kildare can get through this, then a Leinster final is not out of the realms of possibility, Seamus. So like a win for Kildare could really kick them on.
Yeah, no, it certainly could. And definitely there, the comment in there from Paul is a really interesting thing to look at, because I think it's important to remember that the two teams that got relegated this year from Division 2 down in Westmeath were the two teams that got promoted from Division 3 last year. And last year when they got promoted, there was a lot of hype around down the football that they were playing. Westmeath were really solid as well. And like, I do know that Westmeath lost the likes of John Heslin and Ronan O'Toole and everything like that, but they still went down. And even though Down were playing some really attractive football and beat Monaghan on the final day, like, they still got relegated as well. So for Kildare and Offaly, the bar in terms of what you have to do to survive in that division is really, really, really high. And there's not going to, like, as we said, this year, I felt like the 8 best teams at the start of the year on paper anyway were in Division 1. I definitely would put Monaghan above Derry now, having seen, the league and the start of the championship and how Derry were nowhere kind of near Donegal. But like this, you got Derry coming down and you got Tyrone coming down. Tyrone are going straight back up, lads. And that leaves just one promotion spot left. So Division 2 next year will be an absolute feast to watch. I can't wait for that. But yeah, we're gone completely off track. Back to Kildare Westmeath. Yeah, this game very similar to the Meath and Offaly one. It's flip a coin. I mean, you've got a Westmeath side who got relegated from Division 2 without winning a game, but they went down swinging in every one of the games that they played. They brought everybody to a brilliant game. They drew at Roscommon on the final day, a Roscommon side that needed to win that game in order to guarantee their promotion, and Roscommon were very lucky that Meath didn't make them pay. And then Kildare, on the other hand, as Matthew well pointed out, they were looking like they were, back to business. And then they ran into Clare and Offaly, the two most difficult tests that they could possibly face in that division, and they lost them both and then lost the league final to Offaly. There's no doubt they're headed in the right direction. They're not moving as quickly as I think people anticipated that they would. I was anticipating, and maybe naively, but I was anticipating that they would. You remember how Derry got out of Division 3, like when they were down there a few years ago, where they just absolutely blitzed everyone, and it was just like they were so clearly too good for that division. I was expecting something like that. We didn't quite get it, but they have got promoted. Right now, Westmeath, even though they've lost, I think they've played at a higher level in their performances than Kildare have consistently throughout the league, which is a bizarre thing to say. But I don't know. I'll go with Kildare.
Yeah. Mikey says here, Kildare will either find a way to win or find a way to bottle it. Westmeath won't make it easy for them either way and will fancy themselves as much. Yeah, I actually fancy Westmeath, to be honest with you. I think they'll turn up and win this game.
Oh, no, match is the tiebreaker again.
You know what? I'm pretty sure about this one, though. I think, considering the circumstances in this, and it's very, very important to mention this, the winner of this is one step closer to Sam Maguire football, the way it's turning out. I think there's more pressure on Kildare to get Sam Maguire football than there is Westmeath. Because if Kildare were in another season in the Tailteann Cup, I think would they embrace it? By the looks of last year, they didn't embrace it, Kildare. I know they beat teams up really in the group stage, but
they were bad that day against Laois. But in the group games, they were good.
They were good, but look at who they were facing in the group: Leitrim, Waterford, Longford.
Yeah,
all Division 4 level, and then they come up against a wall in Laois. This is what we were talking about with Kildare, and they bottle it basically. Laois were just better than them on the day. I think in more ways than one, there's more pressure on Kildare to prove that they aren't, a side that buckles under pressure against a half-decent opposition, and Sam Maguire football as well, and a Leinster final. So there's 3 reasons there. So for that reason, I think Kildare have to get it among themselves and get a win this weekend. For Westmeath, I don't think there's much pressure on them. I actually think if Westmeath go down to the Tailteann Cup, and Emma said this about Clare on my podcast a few years ago, I'm saying the same thing about Westmeath. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, because Westmeath could actually win that competition. Because I see Westmeath as a side that will embrace the Tailteann Cup, and they could go ahead and win it. They won it in 2022, their last appearance in it. They could do it again. So I don't think there's much pressure on Westmeath. I think there's a lot of pressure on Kildare. They have to go ahead and win this game. I think that kind of drive will be enough to get Kildare over the line in this one.
Yeah, Lee says here, Kildare will win. The disrespect is mad. Kildare have a very young squad, more pressure on Westmeath. And Sean says Kildare perform worse against teams you think they should be, but get up for the big sides. Yeah, I just fancy Westmeath to come through. I think they've been playing at a higher level over the last couple of seasons. I think they've proven it more so against better teams as well. And I think if this game is close going down the home stretch, I think Westmeath will edge you.
That's one thing I actually agree on. If it is coming close down the home stretch, I think Westmeath will have more bottle than Kildare. But Kildare have to build up a lead at half time or go into the fourth quarter to stand the chance of getting over the line this one.
There we go. Louth versus Laois. Matthew, you were alluding to a little bit there, and I don't know if you actually think Laois will beat Louth, but you're kind of mentioning there could be a bit of a surprise on the way here.
It's hard to know what to think of Louth, because 1 week I watched them obviously covering the Cork game for the Southern Star, Cork against Louth in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and I thought Louth were well out of their depth under the new rules. To be honest, I thought Cork should have beat them by more. Thought we were so much more dominant than Louth, which was kind of unusual when you look at Cork and Louth meetings over the last few years. That's when I see the Meath and Louth game come in that round 7 game. I was like, what on earth happened here? Were Meath actually in disarray? Did they actually just bottle it? And what was even more remarkable, Louth were without Sam Roy for that game, which again you don't actually know what Louth team is genuinely going to turn up for this one, because like in some games they've been played out their depth. In some, like Westmeath probably should have beat them in Division 3. Down probably should have beat them. The Roscommon game, okay, they lost by 2 points, but they kind of made a comeback towards the end of it. Monaghan really outplayed them in the first half before Louth made a bit of a comeback. And Cavan really outplayed them when it came down to the home stretch in Division 2. And Cork battered them, really, other than the scoreline, of course. And then the Meath game, they flicked the switch. Don't know what it was, really. It's hard to judge Louth, but I think Laois are genuinely coming into this under the radar a small bit. Like, they do have some good players. I think Damon Larkin in midfield has been really good. Look at the scores charts. I think Mark Barry has excelled in the scoring charts so far this season. It can be a real handful for Louth. We talk about Samuel Roy from a Louth point of view. Laois have their own star forward in Mark Barry. Have a look at him on this weekend. He's going to have a really good game, I'm sure of that. Killian Roach in goal is having a decent enough season as well. And just McNulty made Laois kind of a team that didn't really worry about, I know they finished 6th in the end, but they didn't really worry about relegation throughout the whole season. If anything, Laois were actually looking up towards possible promotion in Division 3 at stages. Laois have a decent enough chance here. It's hard to know, like, again, like the Meath and Offaly situation, if Louth probably play to their full potential and cop on a small bit under the new rules that they can't play men back, they have to think of a plan B. I think Louth will have enough to get over the line. But is there another bad performance in Louth? I'm not sure. We'll have to see this weekend, but I think Laois have a genuine chance here. I don't think it'll be hammering whatsoever. I think Laois have a genuine chance.
Yeah, like I would back Louth to win the game, and I think they can come through it relatively comfortable. But there definitely is the chance, I agree with you, for Laois to shake things up a bit and to make the game a little bit closer. And I suppose for Louth, like it's an unusual scenario for them. And I remember when they played Wexford last year, I think it was, although they came through it in the first half, like Wexford were all over them. And it probably is a little bit for Louth where they are so used to being the underdog themselves that now they're the favourites, and they're probably not so used to that. But Seamus, what would you be thinking?
Yeah, no, again, like agreeing with what Matthew said, like I really think that Laois again have taken strides forward in this league campaign. Justin McNulty, since he returned to the job, has just shored them up. They were kind of in a similar position, I would say, to where we've looked at Wicklow there as a team that is underachieving for the talent that they have. But when McNulty came in, he just got a tune out with them, got them promoted from Division 4 with kind of minimal fuss. And then this season in Division 3, they were solid and they picked up some really, really impressive victories. Their victory over Clare, is proved to be massively costly for Clare in terms of, kind of butchered Clare's opportunity to get promoted.
I think Clare beat
So,
Laois, no, Seamus?
sorry. Who did they beat? They bet someone that shook it up.
They lost to Kildare. They lost to Offaly. They beat Sligo.
Sligo, that's the one. Because I remember Sligo, the second game, I remember. And Sligo basically, once they did that, Sligo had been tipped by everyone. Sorry, you're right. Sligo had been tipped by everybody as, solid promotion candidates. And when Laois did that, it kind of flipped the whole thing on its head, that now Laois were actually surprised kind of dark horses to potentially go up. And I know that eventually they finished sixth, but they were not they were not looking over the shoulder towards relegation at any stage of the campaign. They were solid throughout. Louth, on the other hand, I wasn't too surprised that they were pretty good against Meath on the last day, because their ass was on the line. They needed to get a result in that game where they were very, very realistically looking at relegation. So, especially given the fact that Down did their part by beating Monaghan, Louth needed to win that game. That's a great point by Mikey as well. I like their big game experience. They have, over the last few years, picked up a little knack of, getting good, important wins in the Leinster Championship, be it the semi-finals and everything like that. I think Louth will win this game. I'd be very confident in that.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. I think they will have enough firepower to come through it, but there is definitely a chance for Laois to give them maybe a closer game than people think. We do have Wicklow versus Dublin taking place in Aughrim as well. Look, we all know what the outcome of this game will be. Obviously, with it being in Aughrim makes it maybe a little bit different. Obviously, with it being outside Croke Park, but even in saying that, I think it's good for Wicklow fans to get the Dubs in their own home stadium, and it's good for Dublin to be outside Croke Park. But there is the age-old thing. It's probably the same when Kerry play Tipperary. It's probably the same when Roscommon play London. It's just, we know what's going to happen here, and it's hard to really know what the benefits is for everyone that's involved. Seamus. You're muted, I think.
Apologies, boys.
That must be the Wicklow fans or Croke Park or something.
Yeah. They're not having it. They want me to shut up. I was basically saying there that it's kind of, yeah, you're right. It's kind of rinse and repeat from previous years. I hope it's a competitive game. I hope that Wicklow can put it up to Dublin for long periods. I would be, like we talked at the start of the show about the shocks that we've seen in the championship. If Wicklow were to turn Dublin over, I think it would be the biggest one of the lot. I don't think it would ever be toppled in terms of a shock. It's a team. This is on paper. It's a team that finished without promotion from Division 4 against a Dublin team who were solid in Division 1, and they've got bags and bags of All Irelands in that team, and all the successes that they have, and how many Leinsters do they have, and Dublin. It is going to be a Dublin victory. I'm not going to win any medals for saying that. I hope Wicklow can give it a right good go, though. I really do. And they have some great footballers in their forward line, the Kevin Quinns and, the Porgo Tools and everything. But it will be a Dublin win. But I hope that it is competitive. I hope that the fans pack into the stadium, bring a great bit of atmosphere, and, just enjoy the day. And what an achievement it would be if Wicklow could, move mountains in this game. But I don't think it's going to happen.
No. I think there'll be more chance of the actual mountains in Wicklow moving over to another county than Wicklow actually winning this game. But look, I don't think that's what this game is about, to be fair. I think it is one of them things. It'll be good for Wicklow GEA to get a high profile county in Dublin come down. I think it's good exposure for Wicklow. I think it'd be good for the players, for Oshie McConville as well, to obviously have that test. They're the kind of main benefits to it. Apart from that, there's very, very little there, Matthew.
And I could envisage the Sunday game highlights discussion around this game. And they'll talk about the provincials and how much of a waste of time this is for Dublin. And the frank reality is, with the greatest respect to Wicklow, they have some fabulous footballers, as Seamus mentioned there, the Podjo Twos and the Kevin Quinns, and obviously Owen Darcy and Ocean McGrain need to be added to that list as well. But Wicklow are way off Dublin's level. And that is not an outlandish prediction or an outlandish thing to say. It's just the fact of life. And it's... You don't know how a side like this is going to close the gap, and especially as well, Wicklow went through extra time against Longford last weekend, which would actually tire them even more. Dublin would have had 3 weeks off. I genuinely think, Aaron, this could be 20, 30 points. And it's... Look, I'm not trying to disrespect. I'm trying to, be realistic here. It's going to be a whitewash, and I don't think it's going to be a benefit. I think it's going to be a benefit for the local economy in Auckland, obviously. It's going to be a local benefit for maybe the Wicklow kids that are going to watch the heroes like Conor Callan and Niall Scully and Cormac Costello strut themselves onto the pitch. But other than that, I can't see any benefits, as you mentioned there. It's not going to be a benefit to Dublin because they don't know where they're going to go and where they're going to be at going into the game against either Meath or Offaly in the semi-final and potentially into an All-Ireland series after that. Wicklow are not going to get a benefit after getting a battering going into the Tailteann Cup afterwards. Look at what Offaly went through last year. They got an absolute tanking in the Leinster semi-final and then got absolutely whitewashed by London in the Tailteann Cup. Like, it does happen, and it's just... the main question is, how are we going to get these lower-level oppositions more confident in their abilities? And that's nowhere near completion over the last few seasons, which is a shame. Dublin to hammer them, I think it could be 20 or 30 points. There's not going to be really much benefit in this game.
Yeah, no, I agree as well. I think it could be. I think it could definitely be 20 plus, maybe 30 plus as well if Dublin are well and truly at it. A2 says here, thank Christ it's not in Croker at least, but why on earth are we having this game? And Brian says, well, Dublin have lost a lot of players. They still the core All-Ireland winners on the panel. And yeah, I'd seen Conor Callaghan now named the captain as well, which is great to see. Sean said exhibition match incoming. And Farney Fan TV says Leinster has less pedigree than the O'Byrne Cup, and those competitions got abandoned. It's probably true, to be fair, because at least you couldn't predict that.
Don't clip that up.
Oh goodness! Do you remember the last year, the O'Byrne Cup, where I think was it long? No, it wasn't. But I think it was Louth beat Dublin and then pulled out of the competition like the next day. Like,
yeah, Longford win that every year.
Yeah, Longford just turned into prime Tyrone, prime Kerry or something when the O'Brien Cup is on. Like, I think in this game, look, the one thing that the new rules have made evidently clear, and I experienced it when I was at the FRC trial games, that inside 10 minutes when you realise that Connacht had a better team than Leinster did and Connacht were more up for it than Leinster were, all of a sudden Connacht were like 15 points ahead. And you were like, okay, wow. If one team is better than the other one, or if one team is more up for it than the other one, these new rules can make the game turn into a beatdown real quick. And we could see an example of that this weekend. I'm going to be more hopeful that Wicklow can put up a fight, at least until half time. But I think in the second half, Dublin could put the burners on, and I'm going Dublin by about 15.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't think they'll go for like all out annihilation.
Yeah, I think there might be an element of there'll be a huge amount of rotation. I don't think it'll be Dublin's best team that'll start. I think a lot of the stars, especially the older players, I think will be left probably at home or at least on the bench. And I think
What do you think about John Small coming back?
I think it's brilliant. I think it's great to have a leader back in the team. Mightn't be a bad thing playing him in this game, just to get him a game, just to like throw him in there. But no, I think Dublin need as many leaders as they can get because they're losing a lot of them as well.
Yeah, I agree. I'd start him in this game. just to get some minutes into him and see how he's looking. Because as I said, Wicklow, yes, they don't have the same level of talent that Dublin have, but they do have some really, really good forwards like the Kevin Quinns, Owen Darcy, Pádraig O'Toole there at centre forward, who would be a good, interesting matchup for John Small and a good way to kind of kick his tyres and see how ready for the road is he this year.
Looking at the Ulster Championship, there is we will get on to Tyrone Cavan. I know a lot of people have waited for us to discuss that, but because it's kind of a similar topic in terms of Antrim Armagh, like we do know that Armagh are going to win this game, if we're being honest. It is in Corrigan Park after all the drama and after all the chat and everything else. It seemed to be in a different place every week, but eventually it's staying at where it was meant to be in the first place, which is Corrigan Park. There was a comment from Farney Fan TV earlier. I don't know where the comment's gone, but I did see it there, or maybe I have it started here. Will Antrim do a Newbridge or nowhere performance on Saturday? I think the answer to that we would all say is no, but Seamus, or actually Matthew, will come to you. Will this be similar to Wicklow Dublin in the sense of it being very one-sided, or could this be a little bit closer?
I think it could be closer because of the foray around us and the fact that Armagh historically don't really put beatings on teams in Ulster. Like the last time these two sides met, actually in 2023, Antrim were largely competitive at some stages in the game. Actually, I think Dominic McAdale did well enough. I think he was playing that time. I think Oran Eastwood. I remember vividly watching that game on BBC Northern Ireland because it was one of the first championship games that was actually shown live that day, along with New York and Leitrim, which we know what happened there, the shock. But Antrim were very competitive that day. That was in the athletic grounds in Armagh. I feel like Armagh are kind of very, very inconsistent in Division 1. They put up a brilliant performance, let's say, at home, but then when they have to go to places, they kind of shrink, which has been a problem for Armagh in the league. Don't get me wrong, Armagh will win the game, but I think it won't be a beatdown. I don't think it'll be 20 points or 20 plus. I think it might be, if Antrim could keep it under 10 points, I think that's a success for them going to the Tailteann Cup. The way they stood their ground, they'd keep in their home venue in Corrigan Park, and knowing that they did compete with the All Ireland champions, I think that would be a success in its own right. And Antrim are a team that kind of lack quality a small bit, other than there is Dominic McAdale, who's been in brilliant form in the league. But they have a lot of heart. And Andy McEntee has instilled that into this Antrim team as well. So I think Antrim will fight till the bitter end to try and get a result in this one. I think it'll be close. I think it might be a situation where Antrim are about 2 or 3 points down at halftime and then fight till the bitter end. But then energy might be an issue in the second half, and Armagh might put on the turbo charges and coast for home then. I think that might be the situation on Saturday. I think Armagh, it'll be about 8 or 9 points, but I don't think it'll be hammering.
Yeah, Paul says here, buzzing for a class day in Belfast, few points and a scorcher. Yeah, it's going to be a nice all day for Armagh fans. Don't get too cozy though. Who knows? Maybe. No, I'm only messing. No, obviously, Armagh are going to have a very comfortable day. A2 says Armagh by 9 to 12 points or so. Yeah, no, I agree as well. I think it would be very comfortable. Say 13, maybe 14-point win for Armagh. I think maybe the fact that they have, obviously, you would say either Tyrone, we'll obviously preview that game, but the winner of Tyrone Cavan, obviously in the semi-final, it's going to be a lot more of a competitive game than say what Dublin would play in a Leinster semi-final. So we do have, it is going to be a lot tougher for Armagh there. Tyrone versus Cavan is the last game to discuss. This game last year was an absolute cracker. It went to extra time, and then Tyrone, I think did this game go to penalties last year?
No, just extra time.
Just extra time. But yeah, absolute cracker. Both teams going hell for leather. Seamus, what are we thinking? It feels like Tyrone are better than they were last year, but maybe Cavan are better as well. It's hard to know. So what are we thinking?
Yeah, it's very hard to tell. It sounds crazy to say that Tyrone are better than they were last year when they stayed up last year and got relegated this year, but the reality is they got relegated this year with 7 points, which in previous years you've been in the higher echelons of the table, and we all know that Tyrone should have won that game against Kerry. Probably, you could argue, should have got a result against Mayo as well. And if they had got even just the win against Kerry, they would have been in the league final and not relegated. That's how close Division 1 was this season. So you need to look at the performances. Tyrone blew Dublin away in Healy Park on the final day. They had very impressive victories over Derry in round 1. And just even in the games where they didn't come out on the right side of the result, for the most part, the only performance where, like as Liam White said on my show, the only game where Tyrone didn't play well was the Armagh game. Every other game they played well. And they just were unlucky in the Kerry game. They were unlucky in the Mayo game. And those were the results ultimately that cost them their Division 1 status. Cavan, on the other hand, again, very, very, very close to promotion from Division 2. Match, you were saying it about if Dara McVitie's 2-pointer attempt had gone over, they might have leapfrogged into the promotion positions and snatched the ticket up to Division 1. So it's two teams who probably could have achieved more luck in the league, but the performances were really, really good. I think part of why Cavan were able to get so close to Tyrone last season, as well as their own standards being really, really high last year, was that Tyrone were not quite at the level that they're at this year. So I think Tyrone get the job done in normal time this year.
Yeah, I think so as well. Like I think there does seem to be a bit more consistency about them, attacking wise as well, especially with the Canavans and whatnot. Like I think they'll have a little bit more firepower. And yeah, like Cavan have had some, bright sparks. They started the league a little bit poor, but ended it quite well. Obviously lost to Cork, but still played well enough, I thought, in that game. So there absolutely is a chance for Cavan to push Tyrone, but Matthew, you'd still expect Tyrone to have enough quality to come through.
Yeah, I'd probably say Tyrone as well. And I was at that game, Cork and Cavan, obviously. And yeah, I thought I was very, very impressed with Cavan, especially their two long-range kickers in McVitie and McKiernan. I think they were two key guys for Cavan this weekend. It's going to be very interesting to see if Paddy Lynch is fit for this game. If he is, that could be a boost for Cavan. If he isn't, obviously, they still have to rely on the likes of McVitie and McKiernan. But they have 2-point kickers. Tyrone may have some, like I think the main 2-point kickers for Tyrone, obviously Cavan, but he's only kicked 1 2-pointer so far. But McCurry and actually Michael McKiernan scored 2-12 from play in the league from wing back, which is mental. He's definitely one to watch this weekend. There's no doubt about it. And you look at, even I did a bit of research for this game, and I looked at Tyrone's playing stats and things like that. Tyrone have had the same goalkeeper, the same full back line for all the games, all the minutes in Division 1. Niall Morgan in goal, Aidan Clark, Peter Teague, and Niall Devlin in the full back line. That's consistency. And I am very impressed with that, looking at that stat, to be fair, from a Tyrone point of view. When you compare that with Cavan, only 2 players have played every single minute in the league. And that's, I think it's Kieran Brady and Niall Carolan. The rest of the Cavan team, they've played ifs and buts and things like that, but they haven't played every single minute. Another player to play every single minute for Tyrone is actually Brian Kennedy in midfield. So that's 5 players. That's a third of your team that's played every single minute across the whole league. And that's a good sign for Malachy O'Rourke, who's coming in as manager. And you have the Errigal boys coming back, like the likes of Joe Goose. Peter Hart has done really well since coming back. The Canavan brothers and Rory Dara. I've actually backed Tyrone to win Ulster, and a lot of people were saying it's a horrendous prediction, but you look at the way they performed in the league. I know they went down, but since the adjustments to the new rules, against Galway, they drew that game and probably should have won. Against Donegal, they beat them. Against Dublin, they were utter dominant in Healy Park as well. And as Seamus mentioned there were some games against Kerry, especially against Kerry, the goals got them, and David Clifford was absolutely outstanding that day. Against Mayo, it was a toss of a coin. Armagh, okay, granted that was a bad enough performance, but Tyrone won their second game under the Malachy O'Rourke regime. And then the Derry game, I thought they were very good the first day out. So there was positives from the Tyrone point of view, and they're showing this thing I was probably puzzled about from a Tyrone point of view last year was their consistency. But you look at their team selection now, 5 players playing every single minute. You know who their main players are now. You know which way they're going to play. And I do think that's a positive for Tyrone moving forward. And as Seamus mentioned there, it went extra time because Tyrone were very, very consistent last season. I don't think that's the case this year. I think Cavan, there is a case that they have improved. and they might have Paddy Lynch back, and they have 3 very good forwards then on their day. But Tyrone have improved massively too. And you have to take that into consideration. I just think Tyrone will just have too much for Cavan this weekend. And I think Tyrone genuinely could have a very good season.
Yeah, me too. No, I do agree. Sean says you would predict Tyrone, but they have inconsistency in them. And A2 says Tyrone so flaky and inconsistent. The shock isn't impossible, but Tyrone class should tell. But they always have a stinker in them. You can't totally trust them. And Farney Fan TV says Tyrone will win this by 4 or 5 points in the end. Still don't know if Paddy Lynch is back. Yeah, no, I'm going to back Tyrone to come through it as well. I think there has been inconsistency in them in last year. I think there's maybe been moments and patches in game this year, but it hasn't been as prevalent, I think, as maybe previous years. So, no, I'm going to back the Red Hand to come through as well by 5 points. So yeah, look, we'll wrap that up here. Cheers to both the lads for jumping on the show. Make sure to check out their shows and their podcast when you get a chance at the Gaelic Statsman on Instagram, TikTok, wherever you want to try and find them. And same for Seamus Brady as well at On Clihe. So, and yeah, make sure to check myself out while you get a chance. So yeah, cheers anyone who tuned in, and we'll speak to you all again.